Good evening, afternoon, morning. I'm a little frustrated right now. I've had to go back and do a couple different uh, sessions on this one. First of all, the program that I initially used couldn't locate my files after I had resized them, reworked them, and spent 2 hours trying to cut the video together. Then I did it on this one, and once I changed the playback time, it somehow ended up duplicating the clips. So you would see me deploy twice here, and then I would go on to the other part where you would see me do things twice there, and then it would go on to another part and so on. So I think I've got it dealt with now. I didn't put anything fancy up. I'm learning this new program to see if I like it. It's a free 30-day trial, and then I'll have to purchase more later. So this is where I'm at right now. I ended up putting my Irusk 2 list into Dan's Nemo 3 list, which you'll be able to see more of once I fix the camera angle, because for some reason on my phone, when I line up the shot in the camera, it is much wider than when I hit record. It ends up cropping it down quite a bit. So at Thursday, December 1st is when my camera should get here. So I shouldn't have to worry about any more chopping and cutting and linking things together, and no more please stand bys. This should just be a smooth process that I can just monkey with and record over and resize and put in my little images where I need to. So the list for me is Irusk 2, Man-O-War with a UA and a Kovnik, full Winter Guard rifle corps with rockets, and Kovnik Joe. Ragman is in this list, even though I don't think he's very effective. It was just 4 points that I decided to throw in, which I'd probably rather have Silas or something a little more useful. Maybe even Reinhardt, or Reinhold, whatever. My battle group for Irusk is a Juggernaut and Torch, and then I also have a full unit of Iron Fang Ulans in this list. And then Dan's Nemo 3 list has Silas, Stormclad, Thunderhead being played by Old Rowdy. He also has a Stormstrider that is the colossal wreck marker up at the top of the screen. Lattimore has come into view along with the full unit of Stormlances. There is a junior Warcaster that has a Firefly attached to it. We're playing Linebreaker, and my objective is effigy as well as Dan's objective. So his first turn is just running up. I end up putting Desperate Pace on my Man-O-War. Then what they end up doing is I do know that the Nemo list projects a lot of shooting threat that can break armor. So I end up moving the Man-O-War Shock Troopers up in shield wall formation, because I know at armor 17 they're probably going to get peeled off by the shooting from the Stormstrider and possibly some shots from... I don't know if there was anything even close enough to get in, but I want to make sure that the Stormstrider shots really didn't mess with Man-O-War. And most of them are on a hill, so they're getting that, even though going from 4s to hit to 6s to hit isn't really that big of a saving grace. Now you can see that Brian has not played Irusk 2 in some time. I have some disconnects in my plans. So I ended up moving up Irusk, put up Solid Ground, put up Artifice of Deviation. I ended up putting it base to base with the building that's there to provide some rough terrain so that the Stormlances can't quite charge through it. I mean, they'll be able to assault if they go there, but then I decide to backpedal and say, well, let's just, instead of losing a couple Winter Guard, let's just go the other way and kind of just to kind of outmaneuver him. Kovnik Joe did move up and unnecessarily put tough on them, and now he's just swinging out there on the side of the table because I decided to change my tactics right in the middle of formulating them. Now, this is a good reason why a reason why I'm picking up a mixer and 2 microphones is so that I can have the opponent, whoever plays against me or whoever plays against the other person here, because I will do reports that do not contain me because I am not that egotistical. But I don't know if Stormlances can get Pathfinder innately. I know that most of the cavalry has it built into them somehow. The Ironfang Ulans have Relentless Charge. The Greylord Outriders have innate Pathfinder, as most Light Cav does. Then the Vengers have Battle Driven as a form of Pathfinder, but I don't believe the Stormlances do, and that's why I was happy to throw down an Artifice of Deviation template. That Artifice of Deviation is just so strong. Like, even if they make it so that your guys have to be wholly within to get the cover bonus, it's still an amazing spell. You get cover while you're in it, and you can flop down a small AoE of rough terrain. Now, there's a little bit of discussion to be had about changing Irusk 2's Artifice of Deviation to Inhospitable Ground. I don't know if that's probably unfair. Irusk 1 has it right now. Maybe they could flip-flop the spells and be a little bit more interesting. I just feel like being able to plop that thing wherever you feel like, yeah, never mind, because then his whole control area would be 14 inches, probably still be pretty busted. But I don't know. I honestly feel like whatever they do to Irusk 2 in a potential errata, I really don't think it will make me want to take him any less, because he's a really good caster. Although if they do beat him down, I would like his feat to change, because it's not... Being able to see through stuff is really cool, but the neg-3 speed's kind of like, meh, whatever. So, the Stormstrider had put some shots into Man-War, and nothing happened, really. Maybe a couple damage here, so I'm trying to help Dan clean up his charge lanes here. I had instructed him that, or I had informed him that the building that's there will stop a charge lane from going the way he wanted it to. He has a habit of charging and then rolling his charge, like curving it, and I tried to help him understand that he couldn't do that, and then helped him manufacture charge lanes to get him to where he needed to be. It is one of those things where you want to try and pack guys in to get more charges out of them, but unfortunately it's just not how the game works. So it's good to help people set up clean play and make sure that there are no problems. So here I'm leaving the laser out to show him this is the lane you have to charge in order to miss the building, and then we've got the Stormlance in melee range there. And then this guy also has to charge in, and there's the curving of the charge. So I ended up pushing back in, making sure it could get there, and we find out that there's no other way for another Stormlance to get into the Juggernaut. And based on his positioning, the E-Leaps are just going into the objective right now, which took a little bit of... maybe they didn't take any damage from Lattimore. Either my timing was way off on this, or Lattimore charged the Juggernaut too and just bounced into a Winter Guard. Probably that's what ended up happening. But this game was... Even though this game was only 2 days ago, I played 3 games in between then, so it's a little bit hard to remember exactly what had happened at this time. So right now I'm just trying to see, and this is a problem that I need to shake also, is I wanted to visualize the Juggernaut walking up and having them in 1-inch melee range, and then seeing how many I could get, but then Dan ended up sliding his guys out a little bit more to try and negate me from getting a bunch. I had 2 at the beginning, could only get 2 no matter what, so it's not a big deal, but I need to be a little bit less forthcoming with presenting my pre-measures to my opponent. And there I was utilizing pre-measure to see if Torch could get into the Stormclad, which I realized I couldn't, but then this whole game I also played as though Energizer was not a spell on my card. Like I said, I haven't played Irusk 2 religiously lately. This is the first time I've dropped him in at least a month or 2. So now I'm just trying to figure out how to appropriate my turn. I feel like I've got time on my side here, mostly just spreading out focus. So the Juggernaut this turn gets loaded up on 3, and Torch just gets power-upped because I was like, I'm not going to be able to get him into the Stormclad, so I might as well just leave him alone. And what I should have done was put more focus on Torch because of what he attempts to do here. Yeah, Torch gets his 1 power up. He ends up charging Catherine Lattimore, and I should have put another focus on him to at least be able to make sure that I could dehorse her or hit her with the charge attack, which I ended up not getting the... I missed the charge, hit the fist, did marginal damage, nothing to dehorse her. But if you'll also notice, I did not try to assault with Torch, which I forgot that it was a spell on his card. So Torch is also a model that I do not play with frequently. So mostly he's there for stealth mitigation because I don't have Reinhold in this list. The grenades are semi-helpful, especially when he can assault and charge with them, or he can charge and then assault with them to get the stealth off of things that are a little deeper. So the Juggernaut ends up taking off 2 Storm Lances pretty trivially. He charges to get there, burns his whole stack to get them just to make sure that he hits. Now, I'm fine with this list, or in this list, presenting the 2 Jacks as a very palatable trade. The Juggernaut is here for being a Jack that's 12 points and does a lot of work for the points that it does. Irusk doesn't necessarily enjoy fueling them, or he doesn't necessarily enjoy making sure they can get a little bit further or deeper with Energizer, because he's got, Battle Lust that he wants to put out all the time. He's got Solid Ground he wants to upkeep, and Artifice of Deviation probably needs to go out every turn unless you're playing against an army that you don't really necessarily care about it being out, which I can't imagine there are many that I would do that with, especially since it's dual purpose. But now we've got the Winter Guard taking some pot shots into the Storm Lances, and I don't play against Signar enough, even though we have a lot of local Signar players, to have the Storm Lances armor stat burned into my brain. So I end up shooting a bunch of POW 13s into armor 20 guys, and it doesn't quite pan out for me. So I end up focusing some rocket fire off onto... I think there's 1 rocket that's going on to a Storm Lance, but the rest of my efforts are going to be focusing on that Stormclad that I just pointed at. So they end up all putting, I think it was a 5-man CRA or something like that, into the Stormclad, and he has Nemo's spell where he has +2 armor and repulsor field, I believe it is, on him. So they end up not doing a whole lot of damage to him, but the rockets get a little bit of work done on him to where they soften him up. They don't take out any systems or anything, but this way I can, after I imagine the Stormclad is going to come in and take off Torch, and then the Man-O-War that are behind him would come in and take off the Stormclad pretty trivially. But you can kind of see that more of my tactical confusion is being used with the Ulans here. They ended up running through to jam because I'd rather him deal with a couple horses to see if because he might even have to just put the Stormclad into those, but that was essentially what I did. Now that we're back on track here, the speed this time, I'm sure that you'll comment on it. The speed on this one is 250% because I felt like 200% was just a little too slow. But I see that my playback this game is going to end up being about 37 minutes. I think if I read it right the first time, 34 minutes. So I probably could bump it down to 200% just to get more discussion about the turns. I know 300% is too fast. 200% just feels too slow. And 250 is really, really in the middle here. So we missed a few things after because Irusk had moved over to get more central. And then he put up Artifice of Deviation on the Man-O-War because if he were to clear out the Stormclad, I feel like my Winter Guard are pretty safe. They're not going to take any big shots. They're going to take E-Leap, so I don't care about giving them cover. But the Storm Strider seems to have been interested in harassing the Man-O-War, so I figure I'll make them defense 16 on a hill, defense 14 on the ground, so they become, at best case, 16-21s, and that's a pretty hefty stat to have to deal with. I'm really enjoying Shock Troopers and Mark III. I'm having a difficult time building lists without them, and you can see the feat token is down on Dan's table, or on the table. The Khador feat token is down on the table, but it's to indicate that Dan has popped his feat, so he's putting a lot of he's trying to put a lot of boosted shots into my army to try and take out Manowar and Torch. But now this was the tactical flub of the game, I think, where he decided to force hammer my Torch with Nemo, and he ended up launching him back 5 or 6 inches. It was quite significant, and it ended up putting him in that landing spot right behind my wall of Manowar shock troopers, who are also steady and sturdy. So they aren't knocked down. They take some collateral damage, but it wasn't anywhere near significant enough to drop any boxes on them. That 21 armor is quite hard to crack with trivial damage. And we got into a discussion on the rules about how knockdown works when you are slammed. And Dan was just a little confused in that he was mixing up the rules of a model being thrown that has immunity to knockdown still having to forfeit its action or movement, which is not the case when you get slammed by, or get a model slammed through you if you have an immune to knockdown. You just don't get knocked down. So we end up crossing that bridge, move past it, and these are the collateral damage rolls on the Manowar. I don't even have to pick up my pen. So it was pretty harsh. But now Torch is very much out of the threat range of that Stormclad, who was feeling the need to bury some Khador armor into the dirt. Now I think this list gets very frustrating, or Manowar in general just get very frustrating, and most Khador armies or Khador casters can utilize their spells to make them harder to deal with. So they can really put someone on tilt. So now we've got Thunderhead moving up, and he's intending to clear off the horses, which Ironfang Ulans hit pretty hard, and they're moderately survivable. They're 12, 17 with 5 boxes. I unfortunately didn't have these ones into base to base, which is my forever problem. That if I jam with them, I'm usually trying to jam with real estate instead of putting them in base to base for that 2+ armor, or +2 armor. Sorry, getting all 40k up in here. But the Thunderhead ends up clearing them off pretty trivially with his big pulse shot and then his bought shots afterward. I had to make sure to ask if the big pulse with Thunderhead was a star attack or a star action, so that I could make sure he could buy extra attacks afterwards. So the Stormclad and the Storm Strider are unjammed, so they can go off and do basically whatever their hearts desire. And here we're getting more shots and more E-leaps off that lightning generator gun on the Storm Strider. He ends up, the Manowar in front is the one that he's shooting at, and we have to do a bunch of randomizing for the E-leaps because they're all in shield wall, so we have to kind of trace the path of, if he rolls a 3 for the lightning leaps, it could go to a Winter Guard, or it would just go around in a circle through the Manowar and to the objective. So I do end up losing one Manowar, and the Artifice of Deviation template was unfortunately being held up by the Manowar that came off the table. So I just kind of held it there and was like, we know what has cover and what doesn't, so we'll just leave it at that. That one of them gets knocked out of shield wall, so I just bump him back to get him into base to base. So here we go with curving charges again, just trying to make sure that the Storm, and I understand people want to get as many charges as they can with their melee centric models, but the rules of the game are there for a purpose. So one Stormlance is denied a charge, so we've got 2 going in on the Juggernaut. Now the rolls on the charge attacks and the assault shots are pretty substantial, so I don't imagine that the Juggernaut is going to get taken off the table here at any point in time. Or I mean, I don't have any delusions that the Juggernaut's going to survive this. This is probably the second round of Stormlance charges he's gone under, so the building was a massive saving grace here. And if this is another one where that Artifice of Deviation template in the first place probably would have made it so that the Juggernaut would have survived because he would have taken less charges. But you live and you learn. I'm really liking this Irusk 2 list right now. I think I might end up championing it for a little while. I know that the traditional list of traditional Irusk 2 list ends up taking like 2 big units, and one of them being Rifle Corps, and then usually 1 armored unit like Shock Troopers or Ulans. So I've decided to take the 2 armored units with the Winter Guard kind of holding them up. I think it's been a decent experience in the last few times I've dropped the list, so I think it's got some legs. You know, we got Lattimore going into an objective here, and a lot of her E-leaps end up going into the Man-O-War that's right next to it. And I think that Man-O-War ends up, like, he doesn't emerge unscathed, but doing 7 damage to a Man-O-War is like doing 30 damage to a Mauler. It almost doesn't matter because they're still functional. So this Stormclad decides to charge him some Man-O-War because Torch is gone. So the one he charges goes down, and it was the one that was keeping that last Man-O-War closer to my objective in a shield wall, in the shield wall bonus. So he ends up curving his attention over to the other Man-O-War, and there's even the Stormclad without a charging bonus has some problems taking out Man-O-War that are in shield wall. So the objective has left the table, and so have 2 of my Man-O-War. But that is unfortunately all the work that the Stormclads ends up getting out. So this was where I forgot to take tough checks. So 1 Man-O-War has kept his 1 box. So another good thing about them in an Irusk list is that they don't have to be like babysat by the solid ground bubble with the UA. Getting the assault orders nice. Becoming a really pain in the butt unit to remove is also really, really great. I think that the only thing that I lack in this list with them is Pathfinder, and I think that's where Ragman's probably going to turn into Saxonoric, and he'll be a little bit more of a usable piece for them, and also just for the Winter Guard too. I think Pathfinder would be a welcome thing in this list. Although I think the feat gives Pathfinder. I can't remember. But like, there's so few games that I actually get to pop the feat and utilize it. Just because terrain is not always set up the way that I want it to for it to be effectual or effective. So I don't know. Another thing to make these battle reports more desirable to people is that I should just have the cards in front of me when I'm talking about it, instead of trying to whip all this stuff off the top of my head, and maybe having played the casters a little more frequently when I bring them on. But for right now, it's mostly trying to get a visually stimulating product out. And not product like buy, but product. I just want to produce something that is good and visually appealing. So that's the focus right now, and then all these little notes that I come up with end up becoming beneficial when I start to do the first for realsies battle report. But that probably won't be for some time. So until then, it's just funsies. So I think Irusk ended up going first in this one because we battle lusted the Man-O-War, who try to get charges where they can to get the Stormclad. I'm trying to pull the Stormclad out with using as few resources as possible. without having to commit Torch fully. I would like Torch to just go somewhere else and be a little bit more effective. However, the Man-O-War that was the red Man-O-War, the one that had Tuft, I was trying to measure him out to see if I could get him into ladder more without leaving the reach range of the Stormclad, but it just wasn't in the cards for me. So he had to go into the Stormclad as well. Now, at this point, the Man-O-War haven't dropped the Stormclad at all. So I have to figure out how to... Well, I guess I don't have to figure out anything. I just have to kind of deal with the fact that Torch is going to have to go in and take a couple swings to take down the Stormclad that ended up slamming... or not slamming him. Nemo had slammed him and given him a reprieve for the Stormclad. So here I actually had enough distance to get 2 Ulans onto the Stormstrider with their 13-inch threat. And 1 Ulan ended up charging into the Stormclad that was there. So we've got Battle Lust hit up on them. And the Stormstrider has, its normal pulsar field, but we take the impact attacks on it because it's only going to push me back an inch, which is fine because the Ulans have a 2-inch reach. I ended up rolling a black die there for location because I keep forgetting that battle engines are battle engines and not jacks. But these are some charges. That one was pretty sad with the Ulan and the Stormclad. So they get pushed back off their impact attacks. That's a pretty significant damage roll for them, and the Stormstrider comes off, which I didn't expect it to be so trivial. It's dice off 3 because they're 16, and that's the armor on the Stormstrider is 19, I believe. So I didn't think that they would be able to take it off with just 2 of them, but it ended up working out pretty well for me. I repositioned them back into the water, which I can't do the full 3 inches because they only get Relentless. With Relentless Charge, they only get Pathfinder when they are charging and not when they're repositioning. So I imagine that Thunderhead will make some quick work of them. So Torch ends up coming, and he ends up taking that Stormclad off the table, if I'm not mistaken. Or I'm just trying to figure out a way to deal with the Stormclad without committing Torch, which I'm not really able to do. This one we ended up taking an assault shot with the Covenant. We just charged it to get the assault on it, and he ends up not quite taking... He actually didn't even crack armor, I think, but I was really just trying to not commit Torch into the Stormclad. But it seems like it's inevitable at this point. And armor 20 Stormclad or 21 Stormclad's no joke when you're just trying to throw trash damage at it. Now, I don't quite know what's going on here. Irusk guns up. I don't know what Irusk did that turn. Maybe he was taking a hand cannon shot at the Stormclad because I think it had just a few boxes left, and that's why I was really not wanting to burn my Torch activation on it. It's always frustrating when you've got a heavy that's just hanging out and like, I'm gonna burn this 18-point jack to take out 2 boxes on this heavy. So, but I really didn't want to leave it alone. It's still a little bit on the frustrating side. Now Joe goes in man modes to dehorse Catherine Lattimore, which was fun. I mean, anytime I can get Covenant Joe to do work outside of his battle plans is always a ripping good time. So now we've got the Winter Guard trying to go, because I think one of the problems with the Torch Stormclad situation is that a Winter Guard is in between them. So we've got some rockets. This is my this is my one Winter Guard that decided to try and walk into the Stormclad to try and put the last 2 damage. I think it was exactly 2 damage that it needed to do on it, but I quickly realized that with For the Motherland, he hits him really easy, but with POW 8 axes, he just can't quite get there. So the Winter Guard then are appropriating their shots back at, I think they're going for Storm. Yes, they're going for Storm Lances, just trying to soften them up, because those guys can, even with just 2 or 3 of them left on the table, they can get pretty disruptive when it comes to dealing with little infantry like that. So now, if I'm not mistaken, yeah, it looks like that Stormclad got taken off the table with without Torch having to do anything to it. I don't know. It must have been a Winter Guard rocket that got shot at him, or an aiming Winter Guard rocket. I'm not 100% certain. Like I said, this is another reason to have the second person here, because they'll always remember when their stuff gets ripped off the table, more so than I will, because I'm just, it was not something that I was able to keep straight. I always thought about the idea of taking notes during a game, but it just doesn't seem like it's valuable in general. Maybe, I don't know. It'll be something that I have to explore in the future if it becomes a problem. So there, I lost a Winter Guard to a Firefly, moving up and shooting at it, since he's out of the Journeyman's control area. Now this is Storm Lancepalooza going into a bunch of Man-O-War, and they did not shield wall this turn, so it's a little bit easier to get them off the table. I really like having Assault on them. It's a nice, cute trick to get some additional work out of the unit that costs so many points. However, if I were wishlisting and Santa Claus was real, I would really want the original Iron Fang Pikeman Animus on, or not Animus, but the mini feat on them, where they can when they mini feat, they can reposition 5 inches and go back into shield wall. So that would be a fantastic thing to have. I'd even take reposition 3, but I'm sure that half of you are screaming at me right now for that comment. So an important thing about this turn is how the Storm Lances ended up reappropriating themselves. They have repositioned in a fashion that leaves some very undesirable lanes. I can see that there's a nice good lane to from Thunderhead to Torch, but I don't think he's got the range to get there. It's just, something that I noticed. You can see that the Ulans are also very close, and that model that is hanging out just on the upper side of Dan's objective is in fact Nemo. So the 2 Ulans are quite threatening to Nemo's continued existence. I think even putting 2 of them into him would cause him a world of hurt. So now we see Thunderhead is, or no, there's that. No, this isn't a Stormclad, it's just proxy. So the Thunderhead ends up getting into the Ulans to try and shoot them up. Now, I don't think the Thunderhead has reach. He was checking the reach range to stay out of reach of the Ulans, but I didn't tell him that not that I didn't tell him like I'm being nefarious or anything, but I failed to enlighten him that they have the Lance special rule, and that they don't have a 2-inch melee range. But the Thunderhead ends up taking off 1 Ulan and the Man-O-War UA, and then he ends up getting the last 2 points that are needed on the Ulan. So I have 1 surviving Ulan and I think 1 or 2 Man-O-War. So my options are dwindling, but there's only 3 Storm Lances and a heavy on his side of the table, with a somewhat ineffectual Firefly running around because the Journeyman can't do anything to fuel it. So now at this point, I'm weighing my options. I've got Torch, who's fairly in good spirits. I have one Ulan left. I have one Man-O-War left. I have the Kovnik. I have less than half of a unit of Rifle Corps, unless there's more hanging out behind that hill. So it might be exactly a half unit, but I still have Joe. And Nemo had done enough work that turn to where he is now sitting naked. And this is where that big reposition line comes in, because there are some things here that are make Nemo's life a little bit more difficult. So I checked the range on the Firefly to see if he's engaging my rocket. I think I have 2 rockets left in the unit. So we're just, right now I'm trying to figure out how do I appropriate my focus to take out Nemo, because he's only defense 14, armor 16, and with no focus on him, I feel like I've got a pretty good shot of rocking him off the table with only having 15 wounds, I believe. So the thing that I end up going through my head on is trying to find, because I find out that one of my Ulans or not one of my Ulans, just the one Ulan is in range to charge Nemo. So I end up going pretty deep in the tank to try and not the think tank, but just my what I have disposable for me is good old Irusk. You saw charge through a whole mess of guys to get onto that Stormlance, who is a fully functional Stormlance. So I end up putting Irusk into him to try and take him out, because then I can, appropriate my single surviving Man-O-War elsewhere, and then my Ulan should be free to charge Nemo. I think we were looking. Because here I'm trying to figure out, like, can this Ulan get onto the Nemo without taking free strike? So here I've got the Man-O-War Kovnik goes in to try and charge and take him off the table, and he does, just barely, but he ends up doing it. So he's a nice little piece. He is a 4-point or 5-point solo that ends up making my Man-O-War not slow as shit. So the Man-O-War unit almost costs, I think it's like 24 points or something. It might be even more than that, 25 points to get the UA and the Kovnik, but I think they're indisposable units. So not to keep you on your seat here, or the edge of your seat, but we're back now, which I won't have to deal come Thursday, December 1st. Hopefully, maybe my camera will get here earlier than then, and I'll just be fantastic. So right here, we're trying to figure out if I can get a vector to Nemo with that Ulan and try and dodge the free strike. So it's either I take a free strike from the Thunderhead, or I take a free strike from the Stormlance, and neither one of those seem very very palatable to me. So I end up saying screw the Ulan. I end up charging with Torch, using my assault shot to put a flamer template on Nemo, end up boosting the hit and crack it, and now I have boost damage at dice off 4, and I end up putting I think it was 8 damage on him, something to that tune. Another thing that I'll be exploring too is trying to mount a camera above a dice box so I can run the 2 videos, or the video of the dice, so that they can be put in an image in the video, like a picture-in-a-picture type deal, so that you can see exactly what the numbers are that roll. Because for me, if I'm not using a dice box, my dice get crazy wild, and that's the same thing that happens with everybody else. So, and with I am very partial to the color purple, and my dice are not very easy to read on the fly, so I'll just be using those for blast, or I use the black ones. So it only took 1 rocket getting into Nemo to end up putting him in the dirt. You saw the dice rolls were pretty hot with him. So that is the end of that battle report, and I will see you